Like, I don't even think it was 60 degrees in our house this
My
morning.
house was freezing cold this morning too.
Yeah, we had like all the windows open. It felt great last night, and then this morning I was like, oh yeah, it's so cold.
My dad has the house already at like 80 degrees.
Really? See, and we never, like, we don't like it over 70 ever, so.
My dad's always in ovens.
Yeah.
300, 400 degrees.
Yeah.
It wasn't that cold this morning.
It got, I mean, it got in the 40s, so.
It's pretty much.
Wasn't that bad.
Pretty much neighbors.
Okay, so does anyone remember how to do a problem like this? No? Okay, so let's review it. So they want us to find the solutions, but they want us to find the product of the two solutions. Product means what? Multiply. So not only do they want us to find the answers, they then want to take the answers and multiply them together to get something here. And all of those numbers are potentially a product of two numbers. So this is a tough question because it's not even like we can eliminate anything if we have no idea what we're doing. So what we have to do is we actually have to factor this. And I'm wondering if you guys even remember how to factor, but that's, again, why we review. So when I want to factor something with an x squared, it's kind of reverse FOIL, if you remember FOIL at all. So I want to think of two things that multiply to give me x squared. That half of it's okay. What multiplies to give me x squared? Yep, x and x. So the first half of the parentheses is pretty straightforward, pretty easy. The second half is I want to multiply to get the last term. So I want to multiply to negative 21, but I want to add to get the middle number. So multiply to negative 21, but add to get 3. Multiply the negative 21, but when I add them, it gives me a positive 3. So this type of problem, there's like this reverse FOIL. I'm trying to kind of undo this. So what two numbers multiply to give me a negative 21, but then when I add those two numbers together, they give me a positive 3.
Is it? When I see it multiply negative 21, I see the negative 3 and the positive 7 or negative 7 and positive 3.
So 7 and 3.
That's what I see, but it might be wrong.
But does that add to give us 21? No.
That's what
I can't think of it. I'm wondering if this problem doesn't work. Oh, this is a bad one. I don't know what I did.
Well, is it, did you have to
No.
solve?
I make these notes. So, but I feel like there's, why am I not? 7 times 3. That'd be 4 then in the middle.
Yeah, that's what I was.
And there's no, like, the other factors of 21. Yeah, so, no, I'm sorry. This is a bad question.
It doesn't work.
I feel like I pulled this off an ACT test.
Yeah.
I feel like I have to go figure it out. Yeah, it's G, none of the above.
Nothing.
Bad typo. All right. Well, let's finish solving it and then talk about what our product would be. So, well, no, we can't solve it. Let's change it to a 4, because that would work. I'm thinking that's what this is supposed to be, but I don't think I retyped it. I think I took it right from the.
Maybe you missed the numbers and maybe you
No, like I took a screenshot of it.
Maybe you missed a couple answers said none of the above.
I don't know. So 7 and 3 is correct. So 7 minus 3. I'm sure that's what they were trying to get at. But then they wanted the product of the solution. So we actually have to solve this. And if you guys, again, going back to algebra, we set each of these equal to 0. Because if two things multiply to equal, either one or both of them have to be 0. So we're going to solve these two equations. So I subtract 7. So I get x is a negative 7. And then I'm going to add 3 here. And x ends up being a positive 3. And then when I get those two answers, they want me to multiply them together. So that's why I think they wanted us to do letter B. But like I said, that's just so bizarre. So I swear I pulled this from a practice ACT test. But whatever. I suppose the ACT can make mistakes, but hopefully it wouldn't happen on the actual test.
Maybe you missed one. It's possible.
No, ACT only has 5 choices for everything. I think it was just a bad test. I don't know. All right.
Maybe it was a trick question. You were supposed to even answer it.
Okay. So sorry, bad question, happens.
It's a cheating measure.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about, oh, I forgot to change our goal. We're talking about, yeah, oh, you need to go back.
I wasn't done writing that.
Okay, sorry.
It's not
I always
anything
moved
with
too
this.
fast.
It's a cheating measure. If someone's cheating, they won't answer it.
Yeah.
They will.
All right, so we're talking about real estate loans today. And again, real estate loans might seem further off for some of you than others, but at the same time, you know, before you know it, you're like an adult. And then you have to think about these things. And a lot of these, I don't know that I knew much about real estate loans or mortgages before I actually had one. It requires that you learn it pretty quickly or kind of be in the dark with it. So we've owned 3 houses. We bought a house pretty soon after we got married, a small house in Milwaukee, and then we bought our house in Grafton, and now we're out here, and this is where we hope to finish our loans. But the idea is that if you have to buy a house too quickly after buying your previous house, you don't have enough money like invested in that house, and so if you might end up losing money on it because of all those interest payments that we talk about. So what a mortgage is basically a home loan. So, or any kind of real estate loan. Remember, we talked about real estate being something that stays put. So when you move, you don't take your house with you. It stays there.
There's an asterisk.
Right, there's an asterisk after everything. Yeah, for a trailer, you can just hook it up. Go. The house that's on for sale on our street is like, yeah, the like gray one is kind of like a little like trailer-ish, but I think it has a basement. But I think someone bought it.
The one that's to the west, that's a trailer.
Yeah.
There's a
That's where my cousin lives.
there's a show that talks about people like putting their homes on trailers.
Well, there used to be a tiny home show, like the people who
Yeah.
live in those like little, like really cutesy little houses.
After 5 months, they went into debt.
And then like, I mean, I don't know how people could have that little amount of stuff. I
could literally probably put my desk in the closet and live in it.
But I don't know, living with another person in that amount of space seems
Yeah,
a
no.
lot. Like,
I'll probably kill them for the day.
and pets, like they don't have pets then either, because that's a lot of, like, anyway. So home loan is a mortgage, real estate loan. One of the things I talk about a lot, you hear this a lot in the news and stuff like that, is talk about refinancing. And that's when you figure out that there's a lower interest rate out there and you can go get that and save money on your home loan. So you can like kind of renegotiate your home loan. So when you like get it, you might be able to like lower rates after you've shown that you've done a good job of paying off your loan. So it means basically reworking your loan. So I'm going to say rework or get a new loan to lower rates. Because there's times that rates just tend to be high. Right now, a lot of home rates are very, very low, but if they're high when you buy, then maybe a few years later, you can refinance your home loan and it takes years off your loan, or it takes thousands of dollars off your payment. I mean, it can change a lot. It can really save you a ton of money. And we're gonna talk about that, is basically the big difference between these rates. When we're talking about a 30-year loan, like a few percentages is gonna make thousands and thousands of dollars of difference for you. And so that's why having good credit and getting a low rate right away, or looking for those low rates, is so important. So, it says a couple plans to borrow $220,000 for 30 years to purchase a home. Find a payment and total cost depending on if they get a 4.5% rate or 7% rate. So you're like, oh, 3.5%, not a huge deal, or it's not even 3.5, it's 2.5%. Not a huge difference. I'm going to show you guys over the course of 30 years that makes a huge difference. So, and a 4.5% rate probably is for someone that would have really good credit. A 7% rate would probably be worse credit because they don't trust as much that you're going to pay that back.
So make them pay more money than they will be able to pay.
Right. I think what the idea is, though, like I was talking previously about my sister. She was looking at buying a house the same time we were, and she got quoted really high interest rates, and so she was working on trying to improve her credit score so that her interest rate could go down. So she,
3 credit cards pay.
well, we'll talk about that. So, because actually opening it really fast isn't always the best idea. So, the real estate table that's on the bottom corner of your sheet is going to be helpful because that gives us more years for our loan. So it says it's principal and interest per $1,000 borrowed. So it's going to help us to figure that out. So we basically have to figure out, to use our table, we're going to divide this by 1,000, this number by 1,000, to use that table. So for our table, so again, take good notes on this so you guys can do this on your own. So we're going to divide that number by 1,000. Oops, 1,000 now. So we're going to figure out the monthly payment for our loan for 30 years at a 4.5% rate and then a 7.5% rate. So we're going to do those two to compare them. So on our chart, so on the bottom of your page, hopefully it's not too small, I was trying to fit everything on here. So 4.5%. And then we're doing it for 30 years, which is I think the longest home loan you can get. So for 30 years, and that is 5.07.
30 years when you pay that off, you better get a nice, all expenses get you sauna. Maybe just a vacation. Paid off the house loan, no.
And you figure 30 years, most people work at a job for 30 years. Typically, I think that kind of is why people work for 30 years, or why that loan is the way it is, because it's why you're working. Once you're retired, hopefully you won't have to have house payments anymore. It's kind of the idea with that.
Yeah, I guess also, we have to move 3 separate times. They weren't big movers, they're just delivery times.
Yeah, but so when we moved out here to Random Lake, we took only a 15-year loan because we've been married for over 15 years. We've had a house for over 15 years. So at this point, we're hoping that in about 15 years we'll be done working, because we've been working for 20. So, kind of planning ahead with that. Right. Mr. Donahue said I can never retire because I'd be bored with him.
Probably.
I just need to talk to people. I when I was home on maternity leave when the boys were little, he'd come home from work and be like, tell me everything you did all day, and he'd just be like, stop talking to me, lady. So I like people too much to be all wrapped up by myself. All right. So then, so if we had the 4.5% interest rate, we pay $2,788 per month for our loan there. Now, if we have 7% interest rate for 30 years, it's got really long.
Well, I hope you have a home loan for your home,
Your whole adult life.
just whole life in general. You've already got a house when you're born.
What did I do wrong? Why did I get? Oh, I multiplied. Did anyone stop me? I multiplied by 550, not 220. Sorry. Thank you for. Ask, please do. Sorry, this should be a much smaller number. That's what I get for talking and writing at the same time. I did 550 instead of 220. I thought that sounded really high, just knowing what I know about loans, but at the same time I was like, maybe I don't know.
Have gotten a little low.
Yeah. All right, 115,000 or $1,115.40. Sorry, thank you. And then this one, I was like trying to figure out why this one was lower. So, per month, obviously it's a pretty big difference. And maybe you don't think that's a huge difference, $300. Except, remember this is per month over the course of 30 years. So, right away that interest, you might be like, oh, I'd be able to afford that, you know, it's almost $1,500 a month, I can afford that, I can do that, not a big deal. However, again, if we extend that over the course of 30 years, that becomes a lot of money. So, these are our payments, our monthly payments. What we want to do is we're going to figure out how much more this person actually pays for their house. That's $220,000 over the course of 30 years. So trying to show you guys how important those interest rates are. So again, even if you got into your house at 7%, like if your parents talk about refinancing, it probably means there's a lower rate out there because like again, right now rates are pretty low. So this would be a good time for someone to refinance. They might be thinking about that and that they could cut off a ton of money off their loan. So this is 1 month. We're doing that for 30 years, 12 months a year, right? So I'm going to multiply by 12 and then also by 30. This is going to tell us how much we pay over the course of 30 years for our house. Now, we thought we were paying $220,000. I'm like doubting everything I'm writing right now. So with interest, we would pay $401,544.
For $200,000.
Yeah.
Well.
Same for 2 houses.
Right.
At that point, just get $100,000.
But this one, when I do the same thing, this one ends up being over $100,000 more than that. So over the course of 30 years, that's a lot of money. So trying to find that lower interest rate is going to be important, or waiting until your credit score is in a place where you're happy with it, that it gets you that lower rate. There was like a chart in our book that like years ago, like interest rates were super high and we were really at a very low interest rate over the past like 10 years even. And that is super important. But again, if you get in at a high interest rate, looking into refinancing or something like that is totally worthwhile. It costs money to redo a loan, but the money in the long run is worthwhile. So, yeah, so this is kind of, yeah, actually, so yeah, a few years ago there was a big thing that came through, like they had really low interest rates, so they were giving loans to people who couldn't afford them. They were giving better loans than they should have. And then all these people like went into foreclosure, and so that was the big housing crisis a few years ago. So things are trying to be better. It was really kind of,
It's been over a decade since.
yeah, I guess.
Not a few years.
But it seems like it, because it would happen to people I knew, so it just seemed pretty recent. But like the idea is though that now they're trying to be better about it, because it was almost criminal that banks were giving out money to people if they thought they could afford it. I mean, if a bank tells me I'm going to loan you this, I'm thinking, oh, I should be okay. But just being careful and trying to budget and think about that. Because, and obviously when you pay a house bill, it's not like I pay my house bill and there's nothing else that comes out of my house. I pay, you know, we pay for heat, we pay for all the extras as well, you have to pay for repairs. So making sure that you realize that there's more than just that one fee for your house. All right, one of the things they mention is an accelerated mortgage. And so that's talking about trying to maybe, sometimes when they talk about refinancing, they'll say, we'll keep your rate, or we'll keep your payment the same, but we'll make your years less. Basically, they're lowering your interest rate, and you have to pay over less years. And so that's less than 30 years. So like I said, we were able to do that with our house because we had so much equity in our previous one. So shorter number of years. So that means it's less time to accumulate all that interest. So if it's less years, it's probably going to be less money that the bank is getting from you. So you end up saving money in the long run because you're like basically bound to the bank for less amount of time. So like usually like 15, you can do 10, 15, 20. Then at some point you do get to a point where you've paid your house off and you don't have a house payment. You just own your house outright. So that's a
And then
really
you
good
sell it.
situation. All right, kind of like we did with the like the car loans, we can have a repayment schedule. So kind of setting up like how much are we paying each month, but how much is going to our bank, how much is going to the equity on our house. So similar, we're going to use that interest formula again. So we're going to use that I equals PRT again to figure out the interest rate, or how much interest we're paying per payment to the bank, how much is actually going to our house.
That was Reed, he plugged it as well.
Oh, okay. You know, Gary was going to pick something up. Yeah, just make sure you sign out, please. All right, so it says after a large down payment, a couple finances a home with a loan of $128,600 at 4% for 20 years. So again, so that means they had a big down payment. Maybe they're coming from selling a previous house, or they've had a bunch of money. Maybe something like it was a gift from parents going into a wedding, big promotion, yeah, something like that. They're financing their house. They probably didn't buy a house for this much. They put a big down payment down, 4% for 20 years. So a low interest rate for 20 years. It says find the first monthly payment, then prepare a loan repayment schedule for the first 3 months. This is really similar to what you guys did on your homework, where you had to kind of fill in that little table. So we're going to start with, and I don't know if it helps to do it that way because that's kind of the way it looked on our homework. We're just going to do the first 3 months. Now we're starting with the $128,600. So that's our starting amount. We're at 4% for 20 years. We're going to first figure out how much per month they pay. So if you guys remember, we talked about we're going to take that number and divide it by 1,000. So off to the side here, I'm going to divide this by 1,000. So I'm going to use 128.6. But I need to grab my chart, and I'm going to look at 20 years at 4%. That's going to tell me my payment, or the number I multiply for my payment. $779.32 is what they're going to pay per month, and that's always going to be the same every month. We want to figure out how much interest they're paying on that. So how much is going to interest and how much is actually going to the house. So what we're going to do is we're going to take and figure out the interest on this full amount. So we're going to find the interest on $128,600. So that's our principal. The interest rate is 4%, so 0.04. And then multiplied by a 12. Do you remember we did that yesterday? Because we're paying 12 times per year. So this is how much interest we're paying. So this is the interest. This is the amount per month. So if you guys look at that, we're actually paying more in interest than we are towards our house. And that's the way it starts at the beginning of a loan. So I'm going to subtract those two, and that's what's actually going towards my loan. So that's $350.65. That's how much actually cuts to come off my loan. So I'm going to take that off my loan. So my loan only went down like $350. Oops, no, I won't do that.
Uh-oh.
So you want the first 3 months here. So we're going to repeat that again. Now this first number stays the same. I'm always going to keep paying that. But now this next month, less money goes to my bank and more money goes towards my loan. Now my loan payment every month, what I try to do is I just try to round it up to the nearest like whole $100 or something like that. So every month I'm paying a little bit more on the house than so I'm overpaying a little bit each month. That way more is going towards my house and maybe I can get a few years off my mortgage. So if I can kind of pay more as I'm able to, it's a good idea. And I figure a few, like if I just round up, if it's, whatever, round up to the, the nearest $100, then this is something I don't even notice then coming off my bill. So now I'm going to take this new number and now do my interest rate for that. So I'm taking this one. So this 128, now that's what I'm going to figure out my interest on. So the interest rate should go down because I'm like basically paying on less. So now it's $427, a whole dollar less. So we keep doing this over and over, and I need to stop my video because it's getting too long here. So